Anze Kopitar talked about his future. Did he reveal anything regarding this being his last season? We'll talk about that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. I'm also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night. Right now, we're previewing all 32 NHL teams throughout the offseason. You can check out the show recapping the night in the NHL once the season gets going as well. I'm also a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, we have finally reached September. And for those of you that are like me that are counting down the days until the new season gets underway, we are going to finally have some hockey action to talk about coming up in the very near future. We're just 11 days away from the Golden State Rookie Face-Off. That's September 13th and 14th in Irvine. That'll be the Kings rookies taking on the Sharks rookies on Saturday the 13th at 1 p.m. and the Kings rookies taking on the Ducks rookies at on the 14th also at 1 p.m. And rookie camp actually opens a couple of days before that event gets underway as well. All those games will be streaming on lakings.com. And of course, we'll be talking all about those games right here on Locked On LA Kings. Just a couple of weeks away from the start of Kings training camp, 21 days away from the Kings' first of 7 preseason games. First one is September 23rd in Las Vegas. And now 35 days away from the Kings season opener at home against the Colorado Avalanche. So it is going to be upon us very quickly. And I am very happy that I'll be getting to talk about actual hockey action coming up here very, very soon. But we've talked about this and touched on this a bit during the offseason. It's going to be a storyline continuing through the season, and that is, will this be the final season of LA Kings captain Anze Kopitar's career? This is his 20th season. He is just 29 points away from becoming the LA Kings all-time leading scorer, and of course, his contract is up after this season. Now, last week, Anze Kopitar was on the Sports Central podcast. This is for the local CBS affiliate, CBS2, here in Los Angeles. And by the way, props to CBS2 for having an LA King as a guest on one of their shows. Honestly, local news doesn't typically give a whole lot of love to hockey, so I was pleasantly surprised to see that. As far as some of the content of that interview, Anze Kopitar was asked about his career, and of course, what would be most newsworthy. Could this be his final season in the NHL? Want to talk about what he said, kind of get into it. So here's the quote, if you didn't see or hear the interview from Anze Kopitar. He said about this maybe being his last year, quote, "If I said I didn't think about it, I'd be lying for sure. I've been thinking about it. Not everything is quite decided yet, but it could be my last season in the NHL. Yes," end quote. He added, quote, "It's bittersweet. Hockey is something that I've known for all my life. It's my first love. It's been a big part of my life and my family's life. But at the same time, my kids will be 11 and 9 years old, and it's time they need their dad around more than me playing hockey. So it's something that I have sacrificed a bunch. I've missed a lot of holidays and birthdays, recitals, games, figure skating competitions. And there comes a time when you say this is enough. I want to be a dad now, and it's definitely creeping in my mind. But if this is my last year, I'll give it my very best and leave it all out there," end quote. Now, I've been saying all along to you guys that have been watching during the offseason that we all need to prepare ourselves that this could be Anze Kopitar's final season, and of course, appreciate this final season and this career if this is in fact coming to an end. Now, I also said I didn't think Kopitar himself had made a final decision yet as to if this was going to be his final year or not. So after this interview, has my opinion changed on that? I will have to say, after hearing his voice and the way he said what he said, I don't know what the percentage was before about me feeling like this will be Anze Kopitar's final season. I think I'd have to say, after listening and hearing that interview, I think I'm about 90% sure that this is going to be his last season. Just again, the way he said what he said and what he said, it felt like he's pretty sure, but not completely sure. I think he is smartly leaving the door open just a bit, just in case. Maybe, and certainly hope not, but maybe what happened to Drew Doughty last season happens to Anze Kopitar. God forbid. But let's say he gets hurt early in the season or in the preseason, and he ends up missing most of the year, and he doesn't become the Kings' all-time leading scorer this season. Now, based on his durability, history would tell us it's unlikely that that would happen. Of course, history is what has happened, not what will happen. But Anze Kopitar's always been reliable and durable and pretty healthy. But it's a possibility. It's a contact sport. Crazy things happen. And if that were to happen, I could see him deciding, I don't want to go out like that. I'm going to come back for another year. Also, let's say the Kings have a tremendous season. Let's say they go to the Stanley Cup final and they maybe come up just short of winning another Stanley Cup. I could see Anze Kopitar saying, man, we were so close. Let's give it another try. But if that doesn't happen, if the Kings do what they've done the last 5 times they've been in the playoffs, if it's a one and done, or I think even if they were to win a first round and then bow out quickly after that, I think that would be it for Anze Kopitar. So we'll see. Hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he breaks the record. And if he is going out, as we heard in our interview with former Kings GM Mike Fuda earlier this week, hopefully Anze Kopitar can do what a lot of hockey players and a lot of professional athletes don't get a chance to do, and that's go out on his own terms. And I think that's certainly what he would be doing. He's not being forced out the door. He's not having somebody tell him you can't do it anymore. So again, yeah, he could go out on his own terms, and hopefully again, he's healthy and everything goes well. And again, if this is it for him, he can leave saying, I've given the game all I can. Now, in that same interview, he did also say about what's next in his career, quote, I haven't thought about it that far. Coaches log in more hours than players, so probably not right away. I'm sure down the road I'll get bored and I'll miss hockey enough that I'll probably want to come back. But at the same time, I want to be a dad and watch my kids grow up, end quote. So kind of sounds like the Dustin Brown, where Dustin Brown could certainly have a job in the organization if he wanted it. Same for Anze Kopitar, in whatever capacity they want, whether it's player development or coaching or front office, that kind of thing. But Dustin Brown decided he wanted to be a dad, be around his kids. Ended up moving back to the Buffalo area where he's from. And I could definitely see Anze Kopitar doing the exact same thing. Obviously, he's talked about his words. He wants to watch his kids grow up. He wants to be a part of their lives while they're of this age. So I would anticipate, if this is his final season, I would not be surprised at all if he moved back to Slovenia, where his wife is also from, where his parents live, the kids' grandparents. I'm sure he wants them to be around them. And even though his kids have been raised in the United States, they go there every summer. I would guess they speak the language, and it wouldn't be that big of an adjustment. I could definitely see Kopitar going back to Slovenia until the kids are grown up, and then who knows? Maybe he decides, as he said, he misses hockey, he wants to get back into it, and I'm sure the Kings would be more than willing to have him rejoin the organization at some point. We've certainly seen past Kings legends join the Kings in different capacities, whether it's GM like Rogie Vachon, Dave Taylor, Rob Blake, and of course Luc Robitaille is the president of the team. Again, I think that's definitely a possibility at some point for Anze Kopitar, but again, it doesn't sound like it's something he's itching to get right into after retirement, and that certainly makes a lot of sense. A couple of other things from the interview. Kopitar was asked if he, thought that new GM Ken Holland was moving the team in the right direction. He said, quote, I really truly believe we are taking steps in the right direction. The young guys are developing. Me and Drew are the old guys and can still perform. I think we are definitely trending in the right direction, end quote. He was asked about Quentin Byfield's development and possibly being the heir apparent to Anze Kopitar as the Kings' top center. He said about Q, quote, last year he took a huge step to be so-called in charge of his own line, playing in the middle, and he did great. Obviously, as a young guy, you're going to have some struggles. We all have them. There is very few players who didn't have any struggles. I'm sure he's learned from it. He's going to come back bigger, stronger, faster this year, and he's going to have a better year than last year, end quote. Kopitar was also asked if the offseason at this point of his career is easier or harder. And he said, quote, they are easier in the regard that I know what I have to do. They are harder because it takes more and longer to where I need to be. It's a grind. You have to train your body for 3 months to withstand 82 plus games a year, especially this year with the Olympic break. Everything's going to be more condensed, end quote. So just some of the interview that Anze Kopitar did with Sports Central. If you want to check out the entire interview, check out the latest episode of the Sports Central podcast, but wanted to share some of that with you and comment on some of the things that Anze Kopitar had to say. Now, if this is Kopitar's last season, what options do the Kings have to eventually replace him? We'll get into that a little bit next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer right now. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you want to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye out on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So if you are ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Well, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we do want to focus on this upcoming season, but the question does have to be asked, and since we're talking about Anze Kopitar's future, I think it's relevant to ask and try and answer the question now. And that is, what do the LA Kings do if Anze Kopitar does hang up the skates after this season? How do they go about replacing a top 6 center? That's an incredibly important position on a hockey team. And it's not like they would be replacing an aging veteran who isn't producing anymore. Anze Kopitar is not over the hill. At least to this point, he's not. He's put up good numbers. Last year, he was tied for 37th in the NHL in scoring with 67 points, alongside players like Alexander Ovechkin and Matt Boldy. He had more points than Stanley Cup champion top-line center Alexander Barkov. He was also tied for 37th in the NHL in assists with 46, more than guys like Sebastian Aho and Austin Matthews. Kopitar is still producing. He's still an important player for the LA Kings. Now, again, it's possible his production could decline this season. It's possible, but I would say unlikely, especially considering how consistent he's been in his entire career. And a full season of Andrei Kuzmenko on the top line. If Kuzmenko can fit in for a full season, as well as he did coming in over at the trade deadline, then I can't believe that Kopitar's numbers are going to go down. He's still got Adrian Kempe with him as well. So, even if you believe, or if we find out at the end of the upcoming season that it's going to be Quentin Byfield, that's really the number one center in terms of minutes played and that kind of thing, Kopitar is still a top 6 forward. He finished 8th in the Selke Trophy voting last season. So this is replacing someone who is still a big part of the LA Kings. So what are the options as it stands right now? Well, first, you would look within the organization. Is there a top 6 center prospect that could move into that spot sometime in the near future? And as far as I can tell, the answer right now is a pretty big no. The Kings have no legitimate top 6 center prospects in the AHL right now, or in junior hockey, or in college hockey. No one in the pipeline is projected to be that type of a guy. Maybe a couple of bottom 6 centers, but nobody that's going to be a top 6 center that I can see playing on one of the top 2 lines. Now, if the Kings were to draft somebody in next year's draft, then obviously that's still somebody who's several years away from being NHL ready. So the Kings likely would have to go out and get somebody. Now, if you look at who the unrestricted free agents are at the center position after this coming season, there are two gigantic names: Connor McDavid of the Oilers and Jack Eichel of the Golden Knights. Those kinds of players would obviously fill in very nicely for a guy like Anze Kopitar. Of course, the bad news is the odds of McDavid and or Eichel leaving their current teams, I believe, is very, I would say slim to none are the chances that that's going to happen. Connor McDavid, I believe, is going to re-sign with the Oilers. I think it's going to be a short-term deal to where he can keep his options open going forward and renegotiate a big money deal in, say, 3 years or so. But I think he's staying in Edmonton. They've been to the Stanley Cup final the last 2 years. They still have Leon Draisaitl. They're still going to be a playoff team. There's not a lot of other places he's going to go that's going to be a better situation and also be able to pay him the money he's going to want to command. And Jack Eichel, I know Vegas has their salary cap issues, but he's an incredibly important player for them. I think he definitely wants to stay there. He's found a home there. And look, all players want to get paid, but Vegas always finds a way. They just always do. So I don't think either of those two options are likely options at all. And also, when you see players like that of that caliber leaving, it's usually because they want out. Now, there are some exceptions. Mikko Rantanen last year certainly wanted to stay in Colorado, thought he was going to get paid by the Avalanche. The Avs decided to move off of him, which was surprising. It doesn't happen often. You look at a guy like a Mitch Marner, he wanted to leave Toronto, and they didn't want to pay him, and they felt like it was time for a change as well. Everything about that situation just screamed, he needs a change of scenery. They need to change things up, and that's exactly what happened. And you can even throw in some of the things recently, if you know about Mitch Marner's comments recently about threats made to him from Maple Leafs fans or a certain segment of Maple Leafs fans. But it's rare that those kind of players are available. If you look at some of the other names that are going to be free agents if they don't re-sign with their teams after this coming season, there's names that are not going to excite you. Kevin Hayes, Anders Lee, Nick Schmaltz. There is one name that I thought could be an interesting possibility, and that is Marty Necas in Colorado. There are already rumors that he's unhappy with the Avalanche, and if guys like McDavid and Eichel are not going to be available, which I seriously doubt, he could very easily find himself as the top center available for every team looking to acquire a top six center. Now, he has played some wing as well in Colorado, but he could play center, and he would probably cash in, and I could certainly see him being a possibility, and I think he would be a nice replacement for Anze Kopitar. But again, he's going to be very, very much in demand if he in fact does not resign with Colorado, or he could potentially be traded by the Avalanche somewhere and then resign with that team. So we'll have to wait and see. And of course, we know the history of the LA Kings when it comes to signing big time free agents to fill major holes. It doesn't happen for the Kings. Now, they do sign players in positions of need. We saw that a lot this offseason. Corey Perry, Joel Armia, Brian Dumoulin, Cody Ceci, Anton Forsberg. Collectively, they might make the Kings a better team this year than they were last year, but they're not playing any of those key positions. There's not a goalie, a starting goalie. There's not a top line center. There's not a top pairing defenseman there. These are all supplementary types of players. And we're talking about replacing an Anze Kopitar, who again is at the very worst a second line center. So the Kings could certainly make a trade for somebody. I don't know that there's anyone out there that kind of stands out. The only name of someone who's not over the hill and is a top two center on a team that's probably looking to build for the future, maybe a Pavel Zacha in Boston could be a possibility. I talked about the Kings looking within the organization. If you also want to look within the lineup, promoting Philip Deneau from third line center to second line center, I don't think is a viable answer. He's a good third line center. He's not good enough to be a second line center. The only other possibility I could see for the Kings would be maybe Alex Turcotte. He would certainly have to really open some eyes this year as the fourth line center and really play outstanding. And I think you're like, okay, well, maybe he's a possibility if he really has a good year this year. How likely is that? I don't know, but I would love to see it happen and have the Kings consider that as possibly an option and kind of justify where Alex Turcotte was drafted very highly in the first round many years ago. But I think we can all say that that's probably unlikely. I'd love to see it happen, but I don't expect that to happen. So, like I said, don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But I thought in the context of bringing up Anze Kopitar's future, what it likely is looking like, I think it's a question that needs to be asked. And I think as it stands right now, if this is the final season of Anze Kopitar, the Kings are going to have a pretty big hole to have to fill with him leaving, not just from losing your captain and all of that, but just on the ice as well. But that is something to worry about, potentially to worry about after this coming season. Unfortunately, Liam Greentree, the Kings' top prospect, is not a center. He's a winger. But there is potentially some good news regarding where he might play next season. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Wanted to give a shout out to Kyle Garcia, no relation, I don't think, although who knows, could be a cousin. But Kyle is a reporter for hockeyroyalty.com. You can follow him on X, Twitter at Kopitar for Hall of Fame, HOF. Great Twitter name, by the way, Kyle. But Kyle is someone who covers the Kings prospects for hockeyroyalty.com. And he posted something very interesting earlier in the day that could be huge news for Kings top prospect Liam Greentree. Now, you might remember I have railed about these stupid rules regarding where prospects can play and how those rules are changing for next season. For example, as it stands right now, Liam Greentree can only play next season for his junior team or for the LA Kings. Because he's 19 years old, because of the dumb rules between the OHL and the NHL, he is not allowed to play in the AHL with the Ontario Reign, even though that is clearly what would be best for his development and what would be best for the LA Kings. So going back to junior hockey is not going to really benefit him. And it's very unlikely that he could make the LA Kings roster unless there are some big injuries in training camp or preseason. Because as it stands right now, there are just literally no spots for him to be in. Even if he were to somehow show he might be NHL ready, it's incredibly unlikely that would happen. So the AHL is where he really needs to be to get that year of professional training against professional competition. Would only help him, would only benefit the Kings. And maybe next season, if he could play in the AHL and get that time and do well, maybe he could compete for a roster spot. But as I said, as it currently stands, the rules do not make that possible. However, under the new collective bargaining agreement between the NHL and the NHL Players Association that starts after this season, teams can select a 19-year-old player to play in the AHL. However, Kyle Garcia posted something from the folks over at puckpedia.com that could change that for this season. According to puckpedia.com, quote, the 19-year-old AHL change is not yet in effect. It requires an agreement with the CHL and the NHL, NHLPA, that they've agreed to push this agreement and change this for this season. However, those negotiations have not yet started yet, and there's no guarantee it's effective in the 2025-26 season. So again, that was from puckpedia.com, where apparently the powers that be had some common sense, which is rare, saying that, hey, this is going into effect anyway. Why not go ahead and do it now? So apparently there are going to be, they've already basically said, let's talk about this. Let's try and get this done for this season. So they are going to be in negotiations to make this a possibility for this year. And if they do that, that opens the door for Liam Greentree to play with the Ontario Reign this coming season. I am really, really hoping that this happens. It makes too much sense for it not to happen. It's what's best for the player. It's what's best for the NHL team that employs that player. I've always said I do not understand how you can have a player under contract and not be able to tell that player where he can go play. It makes no sense to me. But again, I guess you could say it makes no sense to the powers that be, who are finally making this change. And while it looked like Liam Greentree was going to be out of luck, that this rule was going to be a year too late for him, apparently, according to Kyle Garcia and the people over at puckpedia.com, that may not be the case. So fingers crossed that this does happen for this season and Liam Greentree can play with the Ontario Reign. I think that would be awesome news for him and for the LA Kings. So hopefully that will happen. If we see an update on that, we will absolutely pass it along and let you guys know about that. And thanks to Kyle Garcia for reposting that post. All right, that will do it for today's show for your everydayers, those you listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day. As always, we'll have our fan feedback show coming up at the end of the week. Feel free to chime in with your thoughts on the Anze Kopitar interview, what the Kings might do to fill Anze Kopitar's skates if, in fact, this is his final season. Also, we've had some great reaction on the Mike Fuda interview from our first show of the week. Glad you guys enjoyed that. And if you have any comments on what the former Kings assistant GM had to say, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. The email address to get your thoughts in for the feedback show, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You're always welcome to post your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. We'd love for you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And now that we are in September and things will be ramping up soon, it's a great time. If you love the show and you want to support your host, let your LA Kings friends and coworkers know about this show if maybe they don't. Word of mouth is a great way to get the word out there about Locked On LA Kings. And if you would be willing to do that to your Kings friends, I would greatly appreciate it. We are also 90 subscribers away from 4,500. I think we can get to that number before the season starts. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube show, I would appreciate it if you would do that. And also, we're going to start ramping up the extra content at LA Kings Extra with videos, interviews from Rookie Camp, the Rookie Challenge, Kings Training Camp as well. If you want more information on that, please send me an email, lakingsextra@gmail.com, to get access to that extra content. All right, I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.